Welcome to Whimsu News. I'm your host, Whimsu News. Longtime viewers of this show will notice it's never existed before. In the past, I've been content sitting in my pool, but it turns out you can't just start deleting a bunch of files from your computer and expect things to still work out. So yeah, now I'm here in this completely original, non-copyright infringing set. I've also used all of your Patreon money to purchase the free application Keynote, so I can create powerful PowerPoint presentations. Won't that be fun? On today's episode, I'll be talking about... Let me get this set up. Oh. So today, I'm going to be talking about... America's fight in Xbox over Call of Duty. I love this country. Now, there was a trial, some things were said, some documents were poorly redacted using Sharpies. And now we know things that we didn't know before. And I'm going to talk about those things. We learned why Microsoft actually bought Bethesda, and it is mildly amusing. Remember when Sony was buying up all those timed exclusives like Deathloop and Ghostwire from Bethesda for the PS5? Well, it turns out they were also going to buy Starfield. At least timed exclusivity for Starfield. And Microsoft got angry, and in response, they just bought Bethesda. So Sony kind of played themselves in this situation. We got a email from the chief of Xbox Game Studios, Matt Booty, to look at, and he had some things to say. Specifically, we are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. Oh, that's not good. That's not something you want to say. Now, through some filing mistakes, we've got a list of companies that Microsoft was at one point considering buying, and it's a big list. Sega, Square Enix, CD Projekt Red, even got Bungie there. Won't that be fun? And there's a lot more, like the Cuphead people are here, From Software, Devolver Digital. Now, it seems like Sega and Square were the two ones that Microsoft were mostly focused on, and I imagine for Square, it was also because Sony was buying up the timed exclusive rights to a lot of these games. Other companies like Crytek and Supergiant were here as well, but the plan seemed to be just to acquire the most notable studios early on, so Amazon and Apple and Google and Tencent couldn't. But of course, Stadia failed. Luna never took off, and the fears of this gaming industry consolidation faded away. And this changed Microsoft's attitude quite a bit. See, at the time, Microsoft was focused on building up Game Pass subscriptions and the cloud. Cloud streaming. This was going to be the future of Xbox. But it turns out, nobody cared. Nobody cared. So the console market is stagnant. The number of people buying game consoles 20 years ago is roughly the same number of people buying game consoles today. And while subscriptions and microtransactions help bring in more revenue, it's reasonable to assume that in 10 years, the console industry will have grown about as much as it can. And publicly traded corporations need to grow. That's all they want. Now, Microsoft looked at this and thought, oh, that sucks. But most people who play video games actually don't play on console, they play on the phone and the PC. Billions of people play on the phone. And Microsoft wanted to appeal to these people using the cloud, bringing games like Halo and Redfall to phones. But there was a problem. These games suck. There was a miscalculation on Microsoft's end, which was the idea that people would actually want to play these kind of games on their phone. Turns out it wasn't the hurdle of not owning a console that kept these people from playing such classics as... It was the fact that they just don't care. They're phone mobile gamers. A lot of these people, billions of people, haven't even touched a game controller. They would not be interested in these AAA experiences. And somehow Microsoft just didn't realize that. So yeah, it turns out, and they've had to admit this, the cloud gaming market isn't growing as fast as they'd like. In reality, I don't think it will ever take off. You're not gonna get like they want like your grandma to be, instead of playing playing Jetpack, instead of playing Line Rider or Subway Game, I don't know what the kids are playing these days. Instead of playing this, they want people to be playing Halo Wars 2. Now this is a problem, because without growth, well, Xbox doesn't really need to exist. In fact, it might be detrimental for it to exist. While PlayStation makes up a good chunk of Sony's revenue and Nintendo is just a gaming company, Xbox is a tiny division within this multi-trillion-dollar corporation. My point is, Xbox is in a precarious position. Microsoft as a company, their main focus is on growth. Even if they got more Game Pass users year over year, it would not matter unless we're talking tens of millions of users. The console market, as a whole, is not going to provide the kind of money that this $2+ trillion corporation is looking for. Phil Spencer recently said that Xbox has lost the console war. Now, he said this a few times, and the reason for it is obvious. The Xbox does sell way less than the PlayStation. But also, the reason he gives for this makes a great deal of sense. It goes back to the end of the Xbox 360 and PS3 days. See, around this point, Microsoft and Sony were actually competing pretty closely. 50-50 market share, but with the 360 in the lead for a good chunk of that generation. But the next consoles, things were different. The Xbox One's terrible marketing practices, all that stuff basically killed any momentum the Xbox brand had going into this console race. And this was the worst time for something like this to happen. During the 8th gen, from 2013 to 2020, this was a time where people were moving from physical media to digital. You gotta think, people stopped going to GameStop and buying their discs, and they go to PSN now, and they buy their games here, and they're storing these games in their digital libraries, their PlayStation accounts. And after a decade, you have 100 million people who have thousands of dollars invested in these accounts, thousands of hours of save data and friends and trophies. Microsoft, no matter what they do, will never be able to compete with that. Because for these 100+ million users who are PlayStation players, they're not going to just move over. The value isn't in the hardware or the software, it's in the information, in the time invested, something that Xbox could never compete with, no matter what they offered. And as Phil puts it, and I'm paraphrasing, even if Starfield was game of the generation, an absolute masterpiece, that would not magically turn these PlayStation gamers into Xbox gamers. It would cause PlayStation gamers to buy a Series S, or maybe pick it up on the PC, but they would still be doing most of their third-party game purchases on the PlayStation platform. And that's something I think that a lot of people miss. First-party games, exclusives, they aren't as important as you might think. Most people that have PS4s have never bought Spider-Man, or God of War, or The Last of Us, or Uncharted. It's estimated that on Xbox and PlayStation, like 80% of all revenue is driven by third-party games. Unless Microsoft actually just did take Call of Duty exclusive and buy up EA and Rockstar, there's no way they could compete. But here's the thing, even if they did, even if they just bought everything up, it wouldn't really matter. Because console gaming is still stagnant. And for a company like Sony, which is worth like 1/20th the value of Microsoft, this might not be a huge issue. But for Microsoft, it does become a question of whether Xbox is even worth keeping around. So Microsoft had to come up with a new solution. One that, in my opinion, is almost worse than the cloud. It's just mobile games. This Activision deal is about this. It's about King. It's about Candy Crush, about COD Mobile. This is not a play for console gaming. They've made that very, very clear. Painfully clear in the past few days. The way Microsoft described console gaming in this FTC case was like the oil industry in an era where electric cars seem to be where all these manufacturers are moving. That's basically saying like console gaming is not going to be here forever. And that's what Microsoft seems to be viewing this whole console thing as. A bit of a rant. Sorry about that. Talking about the FTC and the trial, which was the purpose of this video. Microsoft wanted to buy Zynga, makers of Farmville and other garbage. Former president of Sony Computer Entertainment Europe, Christopher Deering, sent an email to Jim Ryan about this deal and talking about how Activision Blizzard bought King for a mere $5 billion a few years ago, and now King is worth well over 50 billion euros, which is like $54 billion. That's a lot of growth, sure, but it also means that most of Activision's value is in King. And then Deering said, well, this is just Microsoft pissing away money then. There's nothing to be concerned about because clearly they're going for King, not Activision, not Blizzard. And it's like, I agree. This is pissing away money. We know that the reason Microsoft went for Activision Blizzard is because King is the largest mobile publisher outside of China. But the value of King exploded in the last few years. But mobile gaming's kind of fickle, isn't it? I mean, think about this. 10 years ago, Angry Birds, Jetpack Joyride was on top of the world. Now, they're not. No one's gonna be paying billions of dollars for Jetpack Joyride. For Fruit Ninja. Candy Crush Fever could be over by 2030, and Microsoft would be left with Activision Blizzard, which they paid way too much money for. We also found out that Xbox isn't just a loss leader for Microsoft. Now, what that means is Microsoft doesn't just throw money at the Xbox brand and see it go down the drain. There is this expectation that Xbox can actually sustain itself. Now, we don't know if it does that. They didn't say that exactly. We don't know if it's consistently making money or a profit, or aspirationally, one day it might make money. But we know it's a goal, and that's important. I don't know if you remember, but a few months ago, Jim Ryan said that there's an offer Microsoft made to bring COD to the PlayStation. And this offer was inadequate. And I think we're getting some indication of what this might have meant. I don't know if this, I'm just saying what I'm hearing. I'm just saying what it looks like. But it looks like what Microsoft was planning on doing was telling PlayStation they could have access to games like Overwatch, but never specified, say, Overwatch 2. The implication here being that as soon as the deal goes through, new versions of the games could release that would exclusively be on the Xbox platform. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Whimsu News. Next week, we'll cover, I don't know. I don't actually know, because the news hasn't happened yet.